Okay, so I have my piece of clay, and first thing we need to do is flatten it out a little bit. So you can just use your fingers to start that process. It's really soft, so you're not going to need a lot of, if you're not feeling strong, don't worry, it's okay. So one of the things we're doing is we're trying to make it big enough so that rectangle will fit on it. So you need to think like going out, like making it big like a circle. We want to think more like a rectangle-y shape. So I'm going to try to start heading that way with my smushing. And then I'm going to use the rolling pin just a little bit. So I roll it back and forth a couple times, and then I'm going to switch where my clay position so I don't constantly roll in the same spot and just make it super thin in one area. And then just kind of keep checking it to see if you got it enough. You don't want it to be super, super, super thin because it'll be like really flimsy to carry, but it to be big enough to fit on there. Ah, barely. Okay. Have to live with it. Okay. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to use a tool that could be somewhat, use a knife. None of them are actually knives, but some of them are kind of pointed, a little bit more knife-like. So that's what you want to use. And I'm going to go along and cut the rectangle shape. And I'm going to keep this rectangle a bit more of a strength aspect. Remember the relief sculpture? So your cartouche is going to kind of bump up from the back surface, like I showed you those relief sculptures yesterday. Okay, so I'm done with that. You can set it to the side. All right, now I'm going to use tracing paper, and you want to just try to, line up the best you can. I did not place my thing very centered on my tracing paper, so I kind of need to adjust it a little bit, maybe like try to make it more straight up and down. And so there we go. I'm actually going to use my pencil for this next step. Decide if you want to try your pencil or if you want to use, all the supply buckets should have some little tools that are kind of like a little sharpened dowel rod thing. You can use that. You can use your pencil. I think the pencil might, if it's a little bit sharper, it might do this next step a little bit better. So I'm just going to use my pencil and trace around my entire cartouche and all the hieroglyphs. So my tracing paper is a little wrinkly because I did this first block already, and so it kind of, the moisture from the clay kind of made my tracing paper a little wrinkly, so yours will be a little bit flatter. Okay, so I'm tracing. I'm going really fast so that you guys can get started and have more time, but you should go nice and slow and take your time and make it look really nice. And then go over all your hieroglyphs. If your pencil's really sharp and you stab through tracing paper, don't worry about it because you don't need the tracing paper after you're done with this step. So it's not a deal if your tracing paper gets destroyed. Okay, so pretend like all of my hieroglyphs. I did not, but we're going to pretend that I did. Okay, and then I can lift that off. So once you do that, you should be able to see your stuff fairly well, like, enough to be able to maybe bend those lines later. My lion could probably be a little bit more clear to me, but I think I'll be okay. So right now, I'm going to leave the hieroglyphs alone because I want to mess those up doing, after I've gone back and made them deeper. If I mess with them too much now, I might have to just redo them anyway. So I'll leave those alone, and I'm going to do the actual cartouche part. So we're going to use the scraps for the cartouche. So the little ropey part, that's going to be our relief sculpture part where it sticks up the background. So I'm just going to set that to the side for a second while I demonstrate how to roll a coil. So you're going to just use your scraps, squish them up, and then start rolling them into a long cylindrical form. And then I'm going to use my fingertips to roll it in a coil. Don't worry about it if you have to do this in a few different pieces. I have extensive coiling experience, so I can do it pretty easily, but don't be too hard on yourself. If you need to do it in 2 or 3 pieces, it's okay. How big your coil is up to you, but just keep in mind, if you go too much into that inside space, you'll run out of room for your hieroglyphs. You don't want to cover them up too much. Okay, so actually kind of running out of placemat. All right. That's probably fine. Okay, so I've got my coil, and here comes that attaching clay pieces talked about yesterday. You gotta score it, you gotta slip it, you gotta smooth it. So we're gonna use this little guy who looks like a tiny little rake, and this is your scoring tool. And I'm gonna go around where my cartouche is supposed to be, and I'm just scraping the surface of the clay to open it up. It doesn't have to be super pretty. Now you don't want to like go crazy all the place, but you don't have to like go really slow and like measure out how far apart your scratches are or anything like that. It doesn't have to be not quite that fancy. Okay, so now we're going to use the slip. So this is just watered down clay, just like when we use glue. You don't need a lot, just a few, a couple of drops. So I'm just using my finger and kind of dotting it on. You don't need a ton. This is pretty dry, so it shouldn't take a lot. Okay, so now I'm going to lay my coil on here.
Don't you have to also scratch or score them?
Sometimes yes, but this clay is soft enough that just doing the background piece will be enough. Just because this is pretty soft clay. Okay, so put it on there and then just chop it up. Okay, so I've scored it, I've slipped it, now I need to smooth it. You can do this on the inside, you can do it on the outside, you can do it on both. It's up to you. Find a tool that has kind of like a little scoopy part, something like that. And I'm just going to go along the inside of this and I'm smushing the coil to the background. And I'm not trying to lose a lot of my coil. I'm just using a little small amount and I'm smushing it. You'll see it maybe better when I kind of come up around the corner. Smush, 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 like that. So it is making marks, but later on I can come back and smooth that out. This is making sure that my coil dries, it doesn't pop off of the background. Because it's going to dry, it's going to pull into itself, and the background is going to pull into itself, and they might separate unless you've done this step. And it's always interesting to, take these out of the kiln and have oil fall off completely. And it's very easy to scored it or slipped it because I can just look. And if your background's perfectly smooth where that coil was attached, tells me you did not score it. Okay, so I can go back with my tool and smooth it. Your fingers work at good tools, smooth things out. Right here where my coil is two separate pieces, I can kind of smush it together and make it look like it's not broken right there. Your fingers work good tools for smoothing. When you do it, think like you found a fuzzy caterpillar outside and you want to touch it like gently and feel how fuzzy it is. Not like, nice kitty, like aggressive, like really gentle with like one finger, okay? Okay, so then I can do the same thing for this bottom part of cartouche. I can add that, as I was going to say, pretend that I did the scoring and the slipping and the smoothing. And if you want to add that little, if you want to add something to make it look like, the bound up part where it's like tied together, you can step to it, that's fine. And then I'm going to go back and mess my hieroglyphs. So I'm going to go back and make these a little deeper. This tool is not super pointy, so it'll work. But I also, once again, even just use my pencil, which is a little bit sharper. So as I'm going through here and deepening my hieroglyphs, I'm noticing that I'm kind of digging out a little bit of clay and it's getting some little crummies on the clay. Don't worry about trying to get rid of those now. When this has been fired, the first time after the bisque firing, we will lightly sand these and we'll get rid of all the crummies. So don't worry about all those little tiny pieces that are coming off and kind of just hanging around the edges. Don't worry about that, okay? So pretend I did a really good job and here's all my hieroglyphs. They're super stupendous.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you. Okay.
That's so cool.
If you want holes in so that you could put a piece of string in it when it's all finished and like hang it on the wall, it should be a little clear plastic tube in your supply bucket. You just use it to punch little holes in the top. Don't worry about the clay getting stuck inside the tube, unless you worry about it, in which case you can get it out if you want. All right, what last thing I need to do? No, do not eat the clay, children. How does Jaeger know whose this is when there are 50 of these coming out of the kiln? Okay.
Who wrote Jaeger?
Yeah. Okay. Very gently pick it up. I'm going to recommend, based on first box experiences, doing this while you're still seated, not as you're walking towards the cart. Somebody dropped theirs earlier today. And I was like, oh, bummer. You know, some sort of indicator as to your name, please.
I'm gonna put dumpling.
No. Please put your real name. Okay. This gets put on a cart behind Madison. It's just got some wood pieces on it. Top shelf, bottom shelf is fine. If your tools have any chunks of clay on them, and that includes your rolling pin, please, get chunks of clay off. You don't need to go out and wash them. Just kind of pull any chunks of clay off. This little extras pieces right outside the door. There's a plastic container that says clay scraps. Just break this up into a few different pieces, toss it in there, and then you can wash your hands out at the sink. When everybody at your table is done, we'll grab a thing of the cleaning spray, microfiber cloth, and wipe your table off. But just wait till it's done, because that way, you don't have to have 5 trips to the cleaning table. Okay? Any questions about what's happening? Okay, please let me call people to go get their supplies.